Do, 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 do. All right. Hello, folks. Welcome to the stream. This was not the stream I thought I was going to be doing, but this thing got frustratingly big, frustratingly fast. So, anyways, first, right off the bat, and Flick, thank you very much for signing up as a Snazzy supporter and becoming a member for the channel. Reminder that I will try and keep up with the chat. However, the only thing that will guarantee that I see your question or comment and respond to it is to do it as a super chat, which will also get you the little gay heart of appreciation. So, okay. Where do we start with this? So, I don't normally discuss rumors, like as a general rule. There's a number of reasons for that. The main one is it would have to become the entire channel because there's always rumors flying about. So this is generally not something that I talk about. There is a reason why I am talking about it this time. And like me talking about it right now is going to be fairly loose. I'm actually intending this, in many ways, this stream is going to be a dry run for me trying to shoot a video basically right after to try and have out tomorrow. But I have a reason to actually discuss this one this time. So, as I said, the main reason I don't talk about rumors is honestly, first of all, I don't even want to keep up with them in the first dang place, because let's be honest, most rumors are literally pulled out of people's rear ends and start nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. It's something somebody made up on a forum, and then it becomes a game of telephone, and it gets passed around until the entire fandom is going, oh, did you hear that? That's what most of this stuff is. That's what most of it has always been. So why am I going to address the stuff that was kicked off by the Sun in the UK and the initial response that we've gotten from the BBC? Well, here's the thing. I mentioned that a lot of rumors pass me by because I don't dwell in the spaces where they both originate and get spread. So a lot of this stuff I just miss. That having been said, I do catch rumors now and then, just not from the places where they get spun wildly and come out of nowhere. So some aspects of this are in line with stuff I caught wind of, forget how long ago, 2-3 weeks ago or so, from sources that I'm not going to name, but who I have reason to believe were sincere when they told me what they did. So here's the thing. What the Sun is putting forward, oh, hey, Meg, glad you made it. What the Sun put forward was largely nonsense, because the Sun had this whole thing of Gatwa's leaving and is going to move to LA. There is not going to be a third season. The show's going to be put on hiatus maybe for 10 years. Like, most of that is absolute nonsense. And so, like, the big conversation that's going on right now is, like, is the show canceled, quote unquote, or put on hiatus or whatever? And that is what is eating up most of the oxygen in the room right now. And I believe that to be largely BS. I'll kind of talk a little bit some of the nuances on that in a minute. But I believe that to be largely BS. However, it is worth noting that when the BBC responded, and they responded to the Radio Times because, unlike the Sun, the Radio Times actually reached out to the BBC for comment, which the Sun didn't even bother to do. Why would they? It's a rag of a paper. But what the BBC told the Sun was the following. Let me get it here. This story is incorrect. Doctor Who has not been shelved. As we have previously stated, the decision on season 3 will be made after season 2 airs. That is consistent with what they've said before. The deal with Disney Plus was for 26 episodes, and exactly half of those still have to transmit. And as for the rest, we never comment on the Doctor and future storylines. Now, here's the first thing. You might notice that what they are basically denying there is the idea of cancellation and hiatus, which again is the notion that has been largely sucking up the oxygen. Thank you, Carowin. I appreciate that. So, where was I? Anyways, they addressed the notion of cancellation and specifically cited that the agreement with Disney isn't fulfilled yet. And they are expecting that to continue on. What they don't address is whether or not Gatwa either already has or is intending to leave. Now, their coverage for that is addressing the notion that we don't talk about storylines, because they're sort of the umbrella under that they're setting up is that, well, we're not going to tell you if he's staying or going, because that would be confirming a storyline of whether or not the Doctor is regenerating. So that's the way they don't address it, but that is a very roundabout way of denying that aspect of it, whereas they are very upfront denying the rest of it. And without getting into more details than I feel comfortable giving, in terms of what I heard, I have reason to believe that the starting kernel that the Sun ran off the edge of the world with, but the starting kernel of Gatwa intending or wanting to leave, I have reason to believe that is true. Now, as for reasons for that, there could be any number of them, and I have no doubt speculation is going to run wild and rampant. I know what I've heard, but the specifics about why are not something I feel comfortable getting into, just because, like, again, I don't have reason to doubt them, but, like, there's a limit. Like, there's a reason, even though I kind of caught wind of this from people I trust a few weeks ago, there's a reason I didn't talk about it up to now, because I don't like dealing in rumor stuff. So I am still going to put a cap on how much of what was said to me I am comfortable sharing. So I think that there is a kernel of initial truth that Gatwa intends to leave, if not has left already. Now, I know there was the thing a few weeks, month back or so, where, like, Gatwa was on Graham Norton and, like, said, oh yeah, we're doing a third season, and set a shooting date, something that actually got edited out after the initial broadcast on that. So I know that's in the mix, and some people are holding that up, except, like, it's hard to know why that would have been pulled. Now, the optimistic view would be, well, that was pulled because he set an actual date for when they're going to be started. Except that if they had a go on a third season, why would they be denying that? Like, that strikes me as very odd. So it leads me to think that either Gatwa misspoke, or he presented a, like, penciled in tentative start date for a third season that wasn't locked yet, or something of that nature. That's my suspicion for what happened there. Okay, no worries, Meg. Thank you for stopping in. Anyways. So, the thing is, I think a lot is going to be hinging on how the second season performs. As the BBC themselves is admitting, The third season is contingent on the response to the second season. Now, I don't think that's in the broad sense of the show will go on hiatus if the second season isn't good. No, I don't think that at all. But I think it's difficult for them to know what plans they can or can't make until they know the response to the second season. And I think specifically it has to do with Disney. Now, again, I will maintain that there is no indication that Disney has any content or editorial control over Doctor Who. However, they are putting a fair amount of money into it. And if Disney doesn't feel like they're getting enough back out of that money, which they very well might not, then that money is liable to go away. And while, again, I don't necessarily expect Doctor Who to be shelved, as the BBC themselves, denied in this, I think that any potential plans for a season 3 or beyond are in a holding pattern until they know whether or not they're losing the Disney money. Because if you don't know what your funds are going to be, if you don't know how many people are going to be backing you and in what amounts and who might bail, it's a bad idea to start making plans, to start making solid concrete plans, start writing scripts, etc. Because if Disney bails, again, I don't necessarily expect Doctor Who to go away, but it's probably going to immediately result in a scaling back of ambitions, going for smaller stories, stuff that's less expensive, basically, than what they did for season 1 and presumably for season 2. So I fully expect that following the airing of the second season, we will then have a more concrete thing. Oh, one of the other things that The Sun put out was that a regeneration scene has already been shot. I doubt that as well. Well, actually, let me put a minor asterisk on that. I guarantee you it has not been shot in the sense of they have already cast a new Doctor. In the current age in which we live, just the idea of having held auditions for the next Doctor or seen people and that not having got out, much less cast them and shot with them, no, there is no chance that that is the case. That having been said, it is not impossible that, for instance, the second season could end with the start of a regeneration and then it cuts to hard credits right before the face changes. I'm not predicting that to be the case, but I do not think that that is an impossibility. Idris Elba, they can't afford him. They can't afford him, Wayward. So I think you need to move on from that one. So yeah, I think that frustratingly there is a kernel of truth that is being swept under a mountain of nonsense, as is the Sun's want. I strongly suspect that the Sun probably heard the same kind of things that I heard about Gatwa's desire and intent to leave. But then, rather than just report on that, they spun it out into a bajillion potential, theoretically possible, and then just attributed that to their sources, that's what's going to happen because the Sun's a rag. But that doesn't mean that their source was wrong. So, that's the thing that you have to remember with these things, that a source can be accurate, but the reporting can still be bad. This is not uncommon. Some tabloids will just make stuff up, but the thing is, making stuff up from the ground up and having no basis for any of it, that's not a very safe thing to do, especially in the UK, which has very different liability and slander laws from the US. But if they can point to a source that gave them information, then that is a cushion. And yeah, they'll still spin nonsense out of it, but they didn't make it up whole cloth. And I suspect that's probably what happened with the Sun. I've answered that question in the past, 255. No, the answer is no. So honestly, I'd like to move on from the topic. That's sort of my general thoughts and overview. And I'll have more thoughts. As I said, I'm gonna do a more complete video on the matter, and film it fairly soon after the stream wraps up. But yeah, so there we go. That's my general thoughts on it. So let me actually update the title since we've kind of moved on from this. Cool. There we go. I have no idea who that is, Cameron. I don't know what you're talking about. Ms. Wicked Wolf, could you, if you really desperately want me to answer a question, send me a super chat. Don't keep tagging me with the same question over and over and over again. If I was going to answer it, I would have answered it. If I am not looking at the chat, I will tell you I'm not looking at the chat, because like I'll say when I'll go to Discord. Don't keep deleting and re-asking the same question over and over and over and over again. You are spamming the chat. Please don't do that. Thank you. No Doctor Who for 10 years. Do companies even bother planning franchises out that far? I mean, yes, but generally put it to bed for 10 years would not be part of that plan. Thoughts on Empire of Death? I've got an entire video reviewing the thing, Matija, so like I've got like a half hour worth of thoughts on that thing. It's not great. It's probably RTD's weakest finale. It's not nearly as bad as a lot of people decided it was. And he did what he always does. No, I did not, Ms. Wicked Wolf. I did not watch either one. No, I did not, Jason. I don't really care. I don't. Like, somebody sent me a clip of the Lonely Island medley. That was fun. But no, I didn't watch it. I don't care. I mean, I agree in general, Karch, and I've said as much in video. That having been said, like, Doctor Who is in a slightly different position because the BBC is not, because of the nature of the funding and what they have access to, they don't have the means to keep forcing something to come back indefinitely the way, say, Disney or Warner Brothers or Sony or whatever are able to. So, like, Doctor Who's in a slightly more precarious position, but not especially, Matt. Like, I hope the spinoff's good, but excited? No, not really. Have you heard the recent controversy for Fear Her? Okay, yeah, Frank, I know about that. Funnily enough, they only did that in the UK. Okay, so for people who don't know, oh boy, it's so the episode Fear Her, which is already a much maligned and not enjoyed episode at all of Doctor Who from the second series, has a portion that takes place during the Olympics, and there is an Olympic announcer whose voice is heard and who was an actual broadcaster at the time the episode was broadcast. Unfortunately, that person has had a whole bunch of really horrible things come out about them. So in the UK, and only in the UK, they actually pulled the episode from streaming from BBC iPlayer and put it back up with that person's voice removed. It was only their voice, but apparently he's recognized enough in the UK that people were catching it, and like it just made people feel gross. So that's what happened there. But again, only in the UK. I don't know how much of that is a matter of they're just assuming no one's going to notice outside the UK or know who the hell this guy is, or how much of that is licensing deals. So like in the US right now, Doctor Who is on Max, or that stretch of Doctor Who is on Max. And when they bought the broadcast rights, it was to whatever the version of the thing was at the time. The BBC doesn't have control over what Max does to broadcast what it got the license for. So if Max doesn't want to change it, BBC can't make them. So do you think that Doctor Who should have another woman doctor in the near future? I mean, like at some point, certainly. Like how immediately? I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion about that. I'm gonna have to take your word for that, Angus. Like speaking as a non-UK resident, it sounded like generic broadcast voice to me. But I'll take your word for that. That's why they took Fear Her. Yeah, that was the reason that was missing for a little bit. What about an alien companion? It's an interesting change. I mean, I've been saying for years to stop having the companion be young, traditionally attractive woman from contemporary England. I have asked them to stop doing all those. Like the most they've shaken it up is we've had a couple of companions who weren't women, although they were always there as secondary to companions who were. So like, yeah, we had Graham and Ryan, but Yaz was there. Yeah, we had Nardole, but Bill was there. Yeah, we had Rory, but Amy was there. Yeah, we had Dan, but Yaz was there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's that. But like the only other variants have been, oh, okay, well, Donna's a little bit older than the rest. Okay. Like at this point, what I am most sick of is the fact that they are always from contemporary Earth. And like, I get that the idea is that it is the point of connection for the audience, someone that they can relate to. But like, look, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm fairly certain there were more non-human, non-contemporaneous Earth companions in classic Doctor Who than there were companions from modern day Earth. I'm pretty sure that that is true. So I don't know what the hell the modern series is so afraid of with that. Phil Paget, comedian. Thank you very much for the super chat. Take my money. I will. Any thoughts on the Masters of the Universe live action movie? Oh, it's going to suck. It's going to be terrible. Like, part of it's set on Earth. Like, that... That's what the 80s live action movie did. Like, no matter what your idea is, you can't avoid that comparison. So, and also, freaking Jared Leto as Skeletor. Really? Really? The man hasn't been in a successful movie in freaking ages. Why is he still getting work? Stuff he's in, even as a supporting actor, have underperformed or bombed. Like what? No, I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a disaster. Personally, will it be a disaster that's interesting enough to watch? I don't know. We'll see. I don't think it's going to be any good though. Supreme Omega also in with the super chat. Much appreciated. On DC, in contrast to Barry, are you more okay with DC bringing back Kara in the 2000s, or at least a version of Kara, because fans are less bothered by Kara's return? Okay. So we're talking about bringing back Supergirl, as opposed to bringing back the Flash, because all right, Supreme Omega and I have talked before about the issues with DC bringing back their older characters and erasing the legacy, but like and Barry Allen is a massive part of that. But like Kara and Supergirl is a very different can of worms, though. Because, first of all, she wasn't really replacing a successor. Like, yes, there was a Supergirl in the 90s, but she wasn't a Kryptonian. She was a shapeshifter called Matrix. And I forget what ultimately happened with her. I think she'd already basically been more or less out of the comics for a little bit by the time they brought Kara Zor-El back into continuity. Because remember, Kara version of Supergirl died in Crisis on Infinite Earths. So the successor for her wasn't really a straight success. Like, Wally West was Barry Allen's successor. Like, he just was. Straight up. Wally had known Barry. He took on the mantle. He'd been playing that role for a long time. The level of acceptance that Matrix version of Supergirl had was already kind of iffy. So bringing Kara back, probably in many people's minds, felt like a more of a restoration rather than a wiping out of the legacy. So I don't think the two are really comparable just because of where the character of Supergirl was versus where the character of the Flash was at the time it happened. Why is Leto getting work? I don't know. I don't know, Wayward. I really don't. It makes no sense. Ugh. Big question. I want to watch Classic Who for the first time. Where should I start? Oh, goodness. Look up a list of the top 20 classic Doctor Who stories and throw a dart. I do not advise that anybody start at the literal beginning, because unless you really jive with the very early Doctor, it's going to be a slog until you get to stuff that you like, and I don't advise that for anybody. Here's what I advise. I advise a sample platter. Look at what are the best reviewed, best beloved, highest rated stories from each Doctor's era, and watch one of their top 5 most beloved stories for each Doctor. Find the Doctor that you are gelling the most with, and then do that Doctor's era. That's what I would advise. Who do I think Mrs. Flood is? Alexandra, I'm going to give a real controversial answer to that. I don't care. I don't care. And like that's my fundamental problem with this entire mystery box format. It is antithetical to getting me actually invested, because I care about characters more than I care about these vague questions of, oh, who is that? I'm like, I don't care. She's not an interesting person. She's not an interesting character. She hasn't done anything. I don't care. Also, you should mention the fact you can't watch all Doctor Who from the start. Well, no, not literally all of it, but you can watch what's available. I don't think I ever saw you in the next Doctor in the room together. Care to explain? No, Cameron, I will not be addressing that at this time. As I said, I try not to deal in rumors. Up to a point, I agree, but I would not, for example, say start with Caves of Anadrazani. I choose, say, Kinda. Like, 5 is weird, partially because, sorry, I don't like 5's era. Hardly any of it. Yeah, Kinda'd be a solid place to start. Joel Citero. I think that's it. Maybe I'm right. Who knows? Just a quick super to support. Nothing to say. Hey, works for me. I do not mind in the least. What advice would you give to someone starting Babylon 5 now, having seen it? Account for the time it was made. Realize it has a slow start. Those would be the 2 main things. Would you want another Time Lord companion? Not really. 255. I don't think that's particularly interesting as a notion. I don't really think that the Time Lords in general are very interesting, other than the Doctor and the Master. Like other than that, I just don't think there's much there, and I kind of wish the show would stop. Earthshock is kind of good. It's okay. It's all right. Davison's era really doesn't work for me. Just by and large, it really doesn't. In your mind, when does Doctor Who go from classic to modern? Oh, okay. So the modern era starts with the 2005. So what you've got the classic era, which is 63 to 89. You've got the wilderness years, which is 90 through 2004. And so that encompasses the movie and the big finish and the novels and so forth. And then 2005, you have the start of the modern era. Although at this point, I think it might be better to call that the start of the revival era, since they restarted the numbering with Gatwa. I don't know. I'm not sure that'll catch on, though. I have not yet, Goji. I might. Well, I plan to down the line. It's not going to be for a few weeks yet, though. What are your feelings if we don't get the Rogue in Series 2? It'll just be one more thing that could have been picked up on and wasn't. I mean, Doctor Who has a lot of those. Dangling plot threads are not new to this franchise. Discord, thank you, Kerwin. That is true. So I need to hop over to the Council of Geeks Discord. If you have any ideas or thoughts or comments or questions that you come up with and you want me to address when I get back, I really strongly advise you do so as a super chat, because I'm not going to scroll back through the chat to see what I missed. I am popping over to the Council of Geeks Discord, which is a Patreon exclusive perk. So let's see. Bit of an odd question, but the comedian Jax Films has a channel where he features small creators alongside people who badly react to videos. React is in quotes, I don't know why, who submit links to their channel in order to be considered being featured. Will you consider submitting any recent videos to that? Probably not, for a couple of reasons. The first is I don't know what he considers smaller, like literally anyone smaller than him. That's most channels. But also, like, I don't know enough about Jax Films, or more importantly, I don't know enough about Jax Films' audience to know what would be something that I made that would work for them, if anything. So I do not know enough about him or his audience to really move forward with an idea like that. I mean, good on him for shouting out smaller channels, much appreciated, but an update on one I think I asked around Babylon 5 Season 2. Can you think of other characters in sci-fi that match the complexity of Jakar and Londo's character arcs? Perhaps not just science fiction. I struggle, and I also remember thinking when I first saw them, first in the 90s, early Season 1, that they would simply be the background comedy antagonists rather than the heart of the whole effing show. Off the top of my head, I don't have an answer for that. I will say you're going to be hard-pressed to find characters who remained as complicated as they were. Like, it's really only Season 1 where they appear to be simple characters. Their complexities come about pretty swiftly in Season 2, and then they hold it all the way through while also having arcs. What's really admirable about those characters in particular is that they do change. They're not static, but they never lose that complexity. They never become simpler. They change and they evolve, and it's always messy in really interesting, really well thought out ways. No, it's some top tier stuff for sure. Any thoughts on why we still don't have a release date for the next Who season? Nope, not really. I don't, for all the Who stuff that I've already talked, I don't really have any conspiracy theory nonsense about that. We'll have it when we have it. Slarty Bardfast won An award for his fjords. If you were assigned a part of the planet to design, what aspect would you choose? I would take temperate forests. I think I'd have a lot of fun with that. Should the MCU maintain the thing from the comics where heroes have their own rogues gallery that only they typically fight, even if they're notionally supposed to be in the same universe as other superheroes? A lot of people seem to take issue with the idea of Captain America movie having a character from the Hulk comics as its main villain. I don't know. I had not heard that anybody was taking issue with that, and I don't think it's particularly a problem with that happening so long as the rogues are used well. I think you only really get into trouble with that when you're dealing with some of the big iconic villains. Like it would be weird to have the Green Goblin take on Thor. Like that would be weird. But like Red Hulk, while he is a Hulk villain, like as a threat, he's also something that is more than just the Hulk. Like that is a character that is crossed over in other people have had to deal with repeatedly. So as long as the story's good, like it's fine, whatever. Do you think it's a problem that a lot of fiction doesn't depict male characters giving enthusiastic consent on the assumption that men always want sex and or could just push a woman away if they really wanted to? Okay, so the questioner then gives an example of what they're talking about. Short version, yes, but I don't want to pretend that it is as pressing an issue as the frequency of failure to show enthusiastic consent from women. Not that I'm saying one sex's consent matters more than the other. It doesn't. Consent from anybody matters the same amount. But societally, we do have a lot more active harm being done with the disregard for women's consent. But like, it is a problem. It is a problem. And again, much like because I did a whole video on consent and the lack of showing it. I'm not saying that you have to show consent in everything ever. But as a rule, establishing clear and enthusiastic consent is the exception. And I feel like it should be the rule. I think the number of times that somebody goes in for a kiss and didn't ask and didn't get clear signal that was wanted and it just is treated as okay, that should not be the default, and it is. And I do think that does apply with them because like there is an assumption that like you can't actually sexually assault or harass a man, and you absolutely can. And I would say that is an issue, but again, it's not. I don't think it is causing the same degree of societal harm as the lack of consideration for a woman's consent. Again, not because one person's consent matters more, just because of the scope of the problem as it exists, but both are problems. Do you think subs are inherently better than dubs? Oh my God. Okay, I know I've talked about this before. First of all, I don't think either is inherently better than the other. I don't think there is an objective answer to this. I think it is an accessibility feature that people get to choose what works for them. And I think that is amazing. I have no interest whatsoever in getting into the weeds of arguments of people who stick their noses up and get all huffy about, well, this one's better than that one. Well, this one's better than this one's more authentic. This one preserves the experience. I don't care. Do the one that works for you. If you're asking what my preference is, more often than not, I will pick a dub unless the dub is bad. The reason and I'm talking anime here. Forget live action. Live action, I will never watch a dub. I will only watch live action subtitle. We're talking anime. So, I personally will favor a dub because it is distracting for me to have to fixate on the bottom 2 inches of the screen. Will that stop me from watching an anime if there's no dub available or if the dub sucks? No, absolutely not. But if I have a choice, and all things being equal, I'd rather watch the dub so that I can actually take everything in. But that is a personal preference. One is not inherently better than the other, and I do not want to have this conversation again in future. I just watched the introduction to the BAFTAs, didn't watch the rest of it though, and I was struck by what I think is the moment it switches from pre-recorded to live being the part where David Tennant suddenly can't find his note and doesn't get back in tune again until he's in the studio and can hear the band. I don't think I've ever seen a performer style that out so well. So the question is, would you rather see an actor who can't carry a tune convince you that they can sing, they're just not doing it right now because of reasons, or hear a beautiful vocal performance from someone who gets outacted by the wooden set? There's a lot of lead up for that question. First of all, can we destigmatize the old practice of having a different performer for the songs than the acting? Like, that used to be standard and it was fine. As long as you were crediting everybody properly, that's fine. But if you're giving me those as the only two choices, I would usually prefer someone who can act over someone who can sing, depending on what is asked for the part. Because sometimes, like, sometimes some parts, the singing matters more than the acting scenes. Sometimes, like, nailing the song is the most important thing for some characters. So I can't really give you a blanket answer because it is going to vary case by case. Like, I can look at Les Mis and bring up Russell Crowe as Javert, and he's not a good singer. And it really hurts that movie because the entire damn thing is sung. He's a very good actor, but he's not a good singer. They should have gotten somebody who could sing better than that, even if they weren't as good an actor, because they have to sing the entire damn time. By contrast, you know, you look at something, sort of the other side of the spectrum that I'm talking about, where the singing really matters. You know, somebody like I forget what the character is, but the opera singing bit in The Fifth Element. Like, she has some acting scenes, a couple of lines. She's not great, but the singing is amazing, and that's what mattered for that character. The singing was what was important. So whether or not you get an actor who can maybe kind of sort of slightly fudge singing but isn't good at it, or an amazing singer who isn't really that good at acting, what is more appropriate depends on the character and what is needed of them. Where do you find all those eccentric games you play? Steam. Like, I will go through my discovery queue intermittently, just see what looks interesting. That's how most of it comes across my desk. Do you think generative AI can ever be used for good? For example, I know a few aspiring board game designers that can't afford an artist and use AI to create art for their prototypes. I heard it suggested that zoos should use AI to create artificial exhibits of tropical animals so real animals don't have to be taken out of their natural environments contained within a small enclosure. I was wondering what your thoughts were on these uses. Okay, god damn it. All right, I'm really, 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 really tired of having to, of being asked to moderate and fine-tune specific use cases for AI when I have made my blanket condemnation, this stuff is bad and needs to stop. Here's the first thing you need to understand before I answer any of this. Thing number one, AI, generative AI, uses so much energy, so much power, and so much clean water that is wasted and contaminated. I don't care what you're using it for. It is a harm to the planet. So regardless of whatever use case is more defensible in a bubble, it will never erase that problem. So that's thing number one, and keep that as a massive asterisk over that whole thing. As for the specific use cases that you're giving me, okay, first off, if they're only, I noticed that with the board game example, you specifically said prototypes, which to me means that either you or whoever else has floated this as an idea seems to understand that using AI for the finished product would be unethical because of the theft involved and you'd then be making money off of it. But if it's just a prototype, you draw stick figures. Why does it need to be like, why do you have to fake that level of quality on the prototype? Draw stick figures if you're just trying to work out the game. And if you're saying, like, as a pitch package, well, we have to give people a sense, pool some money and hire an artist. If you can't afford them to do everything, hire them to do one or two core conceptual art pieces so you can go, this is the art style we want to do the whole thing in. But right now the prototypes and stick figures, because we couldn't afford to pay this artist, that's why we're raising the money. I think that is doable, because if you are prototyping a whole game, I think you can probably scrape together enough money to hire an artist once to do 1 or 2 pieces of core conceptual art to give people the idea of what it's supposed to look like, and that's it. I get that you can't afford to pay somebody up front to do everything, but if it's a prototype, you shouldn't need it. As for the zoo thing, just get rid of zoos. If you think zoos are unethical, get rid of zoos. You're replacing a animal displacement problem with a destroying the environment problem. Like, what? Here's the one thing that I will say about AI. I'm very specific when I say generative AI is unethical and indefensible and needs to stop. Because there are some things that are now being called AI that were already in use that weren't large language models, but because AI is the hot buzzword, it's now all getting wrapped up in the same thing. So not everything that is called AI is necessarily under my scrutiny, but the large language models and the generative AI, no, it's all bad. And I don't enjoy fine-tuning and parsing specific use cases because it doesn't negate the underlying harm. It just doesn't. What are your thoughts of the Ninth Doctor returning with Rose for more Big Finish stories? Which 2 episodes from Series 1 do you think they should be set between? So, for anyone who didn't hear, sorry I'm a little grumpy today. For anyone who didn't hear, Big Finish has gotten Billie Piper to come back and be Rose. They have already been working with Christopher Eccleston for a little while now, and so there will be new Ninth Doctor and Rose adventures. What do I think about it? Cool. Is it something I'm going to immediately jump on? No, not really. I think it was probably good for them to get, if for no other reason than I think they were probably going to start bumping up against the limit of reasonableness for how many adventures the Ninth Doctor could have had without Rose. I think they were probably already pushing against the limit of what was reasonable there. What 2 episodes should it happen between? I don't know. It could honestly happen between almost any 2. I think anything... I would think anything post World War III. Actually, you know what? Let me get the episode list up. Doctor Who, Series 1, episodes. Give me the list. Where is the list? Here we go. So I would say anywhere between World War III and The Empty Child. I'd say anywhere in between there, because it has to be before they pick up Jack, because Jack starts traveling with them. And I think it has to be after World War III, because that happens pretty swiftly after the first 2 adventures. And by that point, Rose will have had enough experience that you can pretty much throw them into almost anything at that point. So yeah, anything in that range. And that is the last of the Discord questions, which means I am back and that, ooh, hello. Okay, so we have a few super chats coming in. All right, let's see. Christopher, thank you very much for the super chat. Can a problematic person come back if they change, or does cancel culture not allow that? Cancel culture is an exhausting topic, largely because, for the most part, it doesn't exist. Not for major people. The only people who can actually get canceled are significantly smaller people who actually can't bounce back from losing their platforms. And as a broad answer, I can't give you one, Christopher, because it is always going to be a case-by-case basis. It is always going to depend on what they did and how they are able to prove that they changed. That's going to vary case by case. Some people will say something that they don't even properly understand the implications of, and it gets pointed out to them and they go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize, and then they move on. And I would say, like, anyone calling for a cancellation of that, calm the hell down. But then there are people who have caused legitimate harm or who have said harmful things repeatedly after being told that they were harmful and kept doing it anyways. And can they come back if they change? How do you measure change? How do you prove that someone's changed from that? I don't know. It will depend case by case. It depends on what they did and how they are trying to show proof of change. Hypno Amber. Have you seen The Gorge? I recommend it. I don't think I've even heard of that. The Gorge. American science fiction horror action film. That's a lot of things. Directed by Scott Derrickson. Okay. Oh, so that's what Miles Teller has been doing. Oh, it's on Apple TV. Well, that's a problem. I'm not going to read any more on it. Like, that's Scott Derrickson's a solid enough director. Could be interesting. I don't have Apple TV, so it's moot. What else we got? Karch. Thank you very much for the super chat. I appreciate that greatly. Opinion of the tendency to unproblematize characters in adaptations, for example, Netflix, Avatar, Doctor Who, MCU. It depends on what it is you're trying to address and why. So, like, okay. Let's take Avatar: The Last Airbender. One of the things they fixed was the fact that Sokka starts out the show as a pretty flagrant misogynist. The thing is, they kind of showed their own ignorance with that because that wasn't actually a problem. In the original show, he learns that he's wrong and changes. So that wasn't actually a problem with the character. That was just them completely failing to understand the original work worth a damn. So something like that, I'm like, what are you doing? Stop it. There are other things where I think there are aspects to characters that are best left in the time that they originate from and probably shouldn't be carried forward. Just like all of this, it is a case-by-case basis. There are some things that are so intrinsic to a character that if you're going to have the character at all and not have that, it's not even the same character. Use somebody else or make somebody original. And there are also still ways to handle these aspects better. Like, the other thing to remember is that just like characters can have faults and flaws and problems. That's not an issue. The issue is whether or not the narrative validates them. So to take Sokka again, it's not a problem that he's a misogynist because the narrative invalidates that perspective flatly, and he learns he's wrong. So fixing problematic elements is, I would say, not unnecessary. There, like, what should be looked at is problematic aspects of narrative less than problematic aspects of character. Because you can keep a problematic aspect to a character and have the narrative make clear that that's not okay. You may decide not to do that if the character is intended to be lovable and you don't want the narrative to be going, this person is bad for thinking that, because you want the audience to like them. Okay, well, now you're starting to really get into the nuance and dig into the fact that this stuff is complicated and there isn't a blanket answer for any of it. Nuance is a thing. Woo! Jennifer Jennifer DiBenedetto. Thank you. Oh, geez, that's very generous. I really appreciate that, Jennifer. Thank you. Thank you very much. The Pup. Thank you for the super chat. If you were in the Doctor Who universe, which storyline would you like to participate in? First, I don't know if this is my real answer, but it's the first thing that came to mind. I'd like to participate in Midnight, but I stay with Donna at the hotel. That's, there you go. Phil Paget, comedian. Does listening to an audiobook count as reading? Yes. Yes, it does. Reminder, my novel, Dreams of Fire, is available now in audiobook on Audible. It does have Nathaniel Wayne listed as the author. Don't feel bad about it. I don't consider it to be a dead name. Dharma! Thank you very much for the super chat. Is it possible that our species was not meant for the internet? Catherine Valenti makes a case for this argument. What are your thoughts? Well, I don't know what her case is. I would argue our species wasn't meant for most of what we've done. Our species wasn't meant for industrialization. Our species wasn't meant for, just the level of expansion that we've had. Like, whatever nature intended for us, we broke long before the freaking internet. I think the way in which people maybe can't fully engage healthily with the internet brings some unique problems, but like, I feel like that's true of most things humans have done. Our species was probably not meant for that. Like, it's always an odd position to be at. Like, was our species meant for that? Okay, well, first of all, to say that we were meant for anything is like, you're kind of getting into this idea that we were put on into existence for a specific purpose, and that gets into a weird religiosity thing. But even if I set the wording aside, like, we exist like any other species to propagate as best we can, and we're pretty good at that. We're also pretty good at self-destruction in various ways, whether it be of our bodies, our minds, or anything else. So, Coyote Azul, back again. Thank you very much. No question, just figure you need this. Oh, hang on. Stupid thing. I don't know why this keeps needing to be reloaded lately. This keeps happening. Let me find that again. Jess, I thought you needed to do the general atmosphere tonight. Thank you, Coyote Azul. I appreciate that. It's okay, 255. Understand, like, I'm sick of the debate. I'm not mad at you, but like, keep in mind, you don't have to ask a third question. It's okay to only have two. It's okay to only have one. So, like, don't sweat it. Wayward Ace, thank you very much for the super chat. First live of yours I joined. Happy I did. Well, happy to have you here. Hope you'll come back. Trig from Ireland. To what extent, though, is it an author's responsibility to hold the reader's hand and explicitly point out that bad people are bad? Okay, you're kind of extrapolating a little bit past the point I was making. Because I'm not saying that, like, the narrative has to turn to the audience and go, this is bad, but, like, the narrative can negate what a character says or does or believes, or frame it in a way that, no, is not the same as holding the reader's hand. Like, narrative framing is just as nuanced as everything else. So when I say you can frame the narrative in a way to put a problematic character's behavior into appropriate context, that doesn't mean literally turning to the camera and going, you know, kids, this isn't actually okay to do. There are more nuanced ways than that to do it. Narrative framing is a complex thing that has to do with everything from how, whether it's in prose, how it is described and what words are chosen, how other characters react, if it's a visual medium, how it's visually framed, and everything else. Like, there's a lot that goes into this. And I think that's part of the problem. People boil it down to this oversimplicity of like, oh, just change the problematic thing about a character, because to do it any other way requires a heck of a lot of effort. Effort that I would like to see put in more often than it is. Coyote Azul, yet again, thank you. Just remember to webcomic referencing that Wizard of Oz fanfic is effectively canon. That's an interesting notion. I suppose that's kind of true. I suppose you could kind of say the same about Alice in Wonderland for that matter. Thank you, Carolyn, for the heads up on that. Supreme Omega! Thank you very much for the super chat. If Walt was still alive, would he be happy over what Disney has become? Because while he was a proud capitalist, he also funded risky passion projects. I don't like speculating on what dead people would or wouldn't think of our present day, because I don't know, and I don't have much business guessing. At a stretch, I would say that he would probably be frustrated with the amount of recycling, because how Walt Disney himself approached the artistic end of things was to have a fundamental safety net of the stuff that he knew worked and could basically be done in perpetuity. So that's the shorts, the cartoons, and the theme parks. But then when it came to movies, like you said, yeah, he liked to take big swings. He liked big risks. He liked to shoot for the moon. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And the studio, and this is not just a Disney problem, like all corporations of that size, has become extremely risk averse. And yeah, I think he probably would be, let's be diplomatic and go, frustrated with that, at a guess. Because the thing about Disney, and this is something that we don't have really at all in large corporations, entertainment corporations anymore, which is that, yeah, he was a capitalist. Yeah, he was a CEO. Yeah, he owned the business. But he was also an artist. He cared about art. Maybe you don't like his art. Maybe you don't like his approach to art. Maybe you feel like he stifled other people's art with how he went about things. And all that is potentially true and valid to discuss. But you can't argue that he didn't care about the art. We don't have people in charge who care about the art anymore. We haven't for a long time. And you can really tell. Actually, in a lot of ways, the Disney Corporation was an outlier on that issue because it was founded by the actual artist as opposed to just whatever studio head. You know, studios initially and now aren't run by artists. It is not as cut and dry as people tend to talk about it, Robin. It kind of goes, like, there is evidence that he had leanings in that direction, and I'm not going to say that there's evidence that he 100% wasn't, like, you can't prove a negative, but, like, I feel like people talk about that with a lot more definitiveness than the evidence supports. Is it possible? Yeah, it's possible. Are we certain about that? No. There are some folks we were certain. What's his freaking name? Well, I know his last name. Can't think of his first name. Ford. You know, the guy who started the Ford Motor Company. He 100% was. He 100% was on their side until he realized that the rest of the country wasn't going to go with him on that. So, anyways, I think we're going to wrap it up there. So anyways, I am going to have a video more thoroughly dedicated to the rumors regarding Doctor Who. That will be out tomorrow is the plan. We'll see how quickly I can turn that around. But so there's that. Saturday's video is going to be one of two things. I don't know which it's going to be. And so I don't really want to say. There is a video that might be the one for this Saturday or might get pushed back again. That is currently in early access on both Patreon and for YouTube members. That may be pushed back or it might be this weekend's video. I don't know yet. Henry Ford, thank you. That's who I was trying to think of. Anyways, that's going to wrap it up. So that is what is coming up. I will be streaming on Twitch tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. I don't know what I'm going to be playing yet. I need to figure that out. But yeah, I think that about wraps it up for what is coming up. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day, a really great week. Take care of yourselves. Be well, be safe, be kind, and remember that you are beautiful You're valid. You're loved. You're the council, and I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. McCavity!